The story you are about to hear begins in a time of unrest and radical changes in the Roman Republic. Ambitious men vied for power and recognition, while the people found themselves caught in battles and political intrigues. At the same time, heroes and villains emerged, revealing human weaknesses, but also acts of bravery that would echo through the centuries. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, one leader stood out for his blend of charisma, political intelligence, and strategic vision: Julius Caesar. He not only dared to challenge centuries-old laws by crossing the Rubicon, but also knew how to maneuver the power game, forging alliances and dismantling enemies. To understand the depth of this story, we must know not only his military conquests, but also the soul of each character, their hidden motivations, and the way they wore their Roman armor, representing an era when honor and loyalty were as sharp as the swords they wielded. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of our videos full of historical curiosities about ancient Rome. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to face a decision capable of changing the course of your entire life? That's exactly what Julius Caesar faced when he reached the banks of the Rubicon. The Shadow of the Rubicon. The Rubicon was a small river that marked the boundary of the province under Caesar's command. Crossing it with armed troops meant an act of war against the Republic itself. Most generals would consider it an insane risk, but Caesar, with his loyal soldiers from the 13th Legion, did not hesitate. With his red general's cloak billowing in the wind, Caesar confronted the calm current reflecting the moon. He knew that this crossing would be irrevocable. There was no turning back without being arrested or accused of treason. The silence among the soldiers was almost palpable. Many were tired from the battles in Gaul, yet they trusted Caesar blindly. The scars they bore were trophies of victory, and they believed that under his leadership they would conquer even greater glory. For Caesar, crossing the Rubicon was not merely a military action, it was a cry for independence. A challenge to Pompey and the senators in Rome who believed they had the right to decide his future. The famous phrase, "the die is cast," was his way of saying that destiny now belonged to courage. What happens when a man driven by audacity begins to threaten the most powerful political order of the ancient world? Let's discover the impact Caesar's advance had on the hearts of the senators. Fear in Rome. In Rome, the news that Caesar was marching south with his legions spread as quickly as the terror among the senators. Many of them, accustomed to the comfort of their togas and the security of their mandates, did not know how to react. At that time, the Senate was composed of experienced leaders as well as opportunists. Some recalled the stories of past heroes like Scipio Africanus, and they feared that Caesar might become the new savior or tyrant of the Republic. Pompey, for his part, was increasingly under pressure. Although he had been a great general, in his youth he felt that Caesar's popularity shone brighter in the eyes of the people. He also suffered from the anxiety of seeing the city without an organized defense. Faced with this situation, the more cautious senators fled, taking their most valuable belongings and heading to distant provinces. Others locked themselves in their homes, waiting for the storm to pass. Few dared to remain in the streets, and those who did wondered, "What will Caesar do with us?" If you think that courage and ambition are all that define a conqueror, wait until you learn about Julius Caesar's relentless determination and see how he conquered not only cities, but also hearts. The soul of a leader. From a young age, Caesar was molded by a sense of greatness. Raised in the Roman nobility, he had always heard legends about invincible generals. He dreamed of being the one who would break the limits of what an ordinary citizen could achieve. He devoted years to perfecting his oratory skills. Instead of merely commanding, Caesar knew how to persuade and captivate. His words not only ignited the spirit of his soldiers, but also secured political support in the capital when needed. Caesar's physique was that of a man accustomed to constant combat, yet what truly impressed was his intense gaze, capable of conveying both understanding and firmness. Soldiers under his command said that upon seeing him on the battlefield, they felt a mix of respect and adoration. Even so, Caesar was not perfect. He maintained a controlled temperament, but when betrayed, he unleashed the full fury of a leader who did not tolerate failure. This profile inspired loyal followers, but also created relentless enemies. But if Caesar was advancing, what was Pompey, the former Magnus, doing? Discover how the escape routes of a great general would become even more famous than his own victories. Pompey's escape. As Caesar neared Rome, Pompey decided that fighting in open terrain would be suicide. His legions were scattered, and he did not fully trust everyone's loyalty. Thus, he preferred to retreat to Brundisium, a strategic port that connected him to the east. Pompey was regarded as one of the greatest generals of his generation, but the reality was that he underestimated Caesar's speed. Attempting to regroup his forces in the interior of Italy proved unfeasible. Wearing his well-polished Roman armor and the cloak bearing the insignia of his past victories, Pompey set off for the port. Deep down, he hoped to buy time to gather allies in the eastern provinces, where his name still commanded respect. However, his escape caused panic and criticism. Senators who had trusted Pompey felt abandoned. Others rushed to follow him in a sort of political diaspora that would leave Rome virtually undefended against Caesar. Are you enjoying this plunge into the past? If you think more people should know this story, hit that like button now and comment on what intrigues you most about Caesar's journey. Do you really believe that Rome would prepare to fight bravely to the last man? What we find, in truth, are open gates and suspicious glances. Before we proceed, there's one essential thing we must not forget. Caesar's triumphal entry into Rome. Caesar entered Rome with almost no resistance. The walls were not significantly manned, and the few soldiers loyal to Pompey were demoralized. As he passed through the gates, the 13th Legion practically paraded through a ghost town. Some commoners, curious and hopeful, took to the streets to see the man who had challenged Pompey's power. Many greeted him, pleading for clemency or opportunities. Hearing these pleas, Caesar promised that there would be no reprisals. Indeed, Caesar immediately took control of the public treasuries in the Temple of Saturn. With that, he financed new campaigns and strengthened his support base. This gesture showed everyone that he was not merely staging a show, he was there to seize control of the state for good. Yet, far from abusing power, he made it clear that he did not intend to establish a regime of fear. On the contrary, he presented himself as benevolent, seeking to legitimize his actions on the basis of the common good and Rome's honor. Could absolute power corrupt? Get ready to discover Caesar's most surprising move when he assumed, and then quickly abandoned, the title of dictator. The Brief Dictator. The situation was so critical that the Senate itself, in Pompey's absence, bestowed upon Caesar the title of dictator. By law, this was an extraordinary position, usually limited to 6 months, granting one person supreme power in times of crisis. Caesar accepted immediately, as it gave him the means to issue decrees without major obstacles. However, to everyone's surprise, he renounced the post after only 11 days. This act demonstrated just how strategic he was. He did not want to be seen as a power-hungry tyrant. This renunciation, seemingly noble, was also a masterstroke. It won over the distrust of part of the elite, who still remembered the past, when Rome had feared kings and their unlimited power. Caesar demonstrated respect for the Republican tradition, at least in theory. If there had been a contemporary press, it would surely have made headlines like Caesar, the lightning dictator. The fact is, by abdicating the role so quickly, he secured a political advantage, proving that he did not intend to govern solely by force of arms, but also through diplomacy. Had Caesar renounced because he was truly humble, or was there an even greater maneuver underway? Discover the next move that kept him at the top. The consulship that hid the power. Soon after renouncing the title of dictator, Caesar was elected consul. This was a respected traditional position that was more acceptable to the Roman people. Now he governed within the laws of the Republic, but that did not mean his power was diminished. His adversaries knew he controlled the most feared legion and the state treasury. Moreover, his reputation grew with each victory. Ordinary people saw Caesar as someone who could bring reforms and end aristocratic corruption. Cicero, the famous orator and senator, commented in one of his letters that Caesar was a master at dressing up his republican appearance while wielding the strength of a king. It was exactly the general sentiment. The Republic appeared to breathe, but it was under the reins of a fearless commander. During his consulship, Caesar initiated various projects, such as administrative reorganizations and changes to the calendar, which eventually became the Julian calendar. With this, he proved himself not only a skilled general, but also a visionary manager. When a man concentrates so much power, he inevitably creates fervent allies and enemies ready to strike back. What effect will this have on the heart of Rome? The polarization of Rome. Caesar's presence in the capital divided Roman society. Part of the people celebrated his measures as he promised to alleviate debts, distribute land, and end the exploitation by some nobles. To many, he became a popular hero. On the other hand, the senators who had fled with Pompey felt betrayed. Some who remained in Rome expressed support out of fear or convenience, yet they kept the door open for a potential turnaround. Meanwhile, Caesar offered amnesty to those willing to return. He understood that clemency generated gratitude, and gratitude in turn fostered loyalty. But his critics saw this tactic as nothing more than a disguise to imprison the hearts of those still hesitant. There was no middle ground. Either you sided with Caesar, or you feared the moment when his power would become unquestionable. And it was precisely this deadlock that fueled the next phase of the conflict, beyond the borders of Rome. With Caesar holding central power, would Pompey be nothing more than a shadow of the past? Just wait until you see how he would try to turn the tide on the other side of the sea. Pompey's escape to Greece. After escaping Brundisium, Pompey reached Greece with his fleet. There, he used his influence to gather troops and resources, forming one of the largest armies the ancient world had ever seen. In the eastern region, Pompey still had friends and allies who regarded him as the legitimate protector of the Republic against the ambitious Caesar. Local kings offered money and supplies, while experienced generals joined his cause. Wearing his well-polished Roman armor, but now in foreign territory, Pompey orchestrated a major offensive. He knew that without naval superiority, Caesar would face great difficulties moving his legions across the sea. Pompey's strategies included isolating Caesar from his supplies and wearing him down in long campaigns far from home. He intended to prove that Caesar's rapid maneuvers would have little value against the might of a well-organized and financed army. Do you think Caesar would directly confront Pompey on Greek soil? There is one more surprising move. First, to neutralize the enemy's rear. And this is where our story takes a leap toward the climax. The first step toward total conquest. Before pursuing Pompey in Greece, Caesar decided that Spain needed to be controlled. That was where many of Pompey's loyal generals were stationed, in addition to being a region rich in supplies and experienced soldiers. Determined, Caesar set out from Rome with several legions and crossed the Pyrenees. It was an arduous campaign, as the rugged terrain and logistical challenges tested even the most battle-hardened soldiers. His battles against generals Afranius and Petreius were fierce. They knew the local terrain well and had the support of part of the population. Still, the discipline of the 13th Legion prevailed. The victory at Ilerda consolidated Caesar's dominion over the Iberian Peninsula. With that accomplished, Caesar turned his full attention back to Pompey, who was now ready to cross the sea and seek the final confrontation. The clash that was. To come promised to be one of the bloodiest and most decisive chapters of the Civil War. But that is a story for our next video. Therefore, Rome, with its togas, gleaming armor, and relentless intrigues, was living in a moment when a single step could change the fate of millions. Julius Caesar and Pompey, two giants of their era, embarked on a collision course that would shake the foundations of the Republic and echo throughout history. Every decision, every battle, every political choice put at stake the life and future of an empire. This story, full of betrayals, twists, and military genius, does not end here. It is just one chapter in the long journey that would lead Caesar to become one of the most renowned names in history. And of course, you are a fundamental part of this journey as you seek to learn more about the past and reflect on how these plots shaped the world we know today. If you enjoyed this time-traveling adventure and want more fascinating stories, subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and share this video with your friends. Comment below what surprised you the most about Caesar's trajectory. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video about ancient Rome and the Empire.